Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Kamish Orr, and today I have a little bit something different today for a video, probably a very short one, but it's a little bit of baseball trivia. It's a question that arose when I was reading Joe Posnanski's new book. I did a video on his top 100 major league players, the Baseball 100, it was called. And I'm also reading his new book, which is Baseball in 50 Moments, or I guess I should have figured out what it was called before I started the video. Why We Love Baseball: A History in 50 Moments. And I was reading the book, and there was one of the mentions was about how many Hall of Famers were in the playing in a particular game, and it got me thinking. This question, and I'm going to give you the answer, or what I think is the answer, later on in the video. But here's the question I posed to you: What regular season game had the most Hall of Famers that played in the game, or that were active in the game? So we're not talking about players on the bench that never made it in. We're talking about players who actually played in the game. And so that's kind of the question that I was wondering. I'm like, well, what game would it have been that had the most Hall of Famers playing in it? And so I'm going to give you my thought process. If you want to pause and think about it for a bit, this isn't something you can look up easily. I did use Google, and I found a thread actually on a forum that I didn't know anything about. Net54baseball.com is the forum. This was back in 2011, or no, excuse me, the start 2017. 2017 is when this question was posed on that forum, and I believe that there is the answer to the question is one of the responses in the forum. March 19th, 2017 is when the answer was given. Anyway, it's not something you can easily Google. Maybe you can Google it better than I can, but I couldn't easily Google it. But that's the question I posed to you. And here was my thought process. Well, it's got to be an older game probably, because just by the way time works, it's not going to be a game from like the 80s probably, because there is I guess it could be, but there are fewer chances for people to get inducted into the Hall of Fame, either through the regular process of the Veterans Committee or whatever. So probably wouldn't be, it would probably be an older game is what I was thinking. Probably an older game, maybe from like the teens or the 20s or the 30s, somewhere back in there. I know the Yankees had that was the second thing I thought. Well, the Yankees have a lot of Hall of Famers, so it's probably a Yankees game, right? And if it's a Yankees game, it's probably sometime in the 20s or 30s when the team was stacked. And then you also have the Frankie Frisch effect. Frankie Frisch was a baseball player, obviously, and in 1947 he was elected to the Hall of Fame, and he was actually hugely influential in the voting process for the Veterans Committee. So over time, and you can look this up if you want to Google a Frankie Frisch effect, Hall of Fame effect, or whatever you want to do. But over time, he tended to get a lot of his friends into the Hall of Fame, being on the Veterans Committee. So that's why there may be players that one could argue whether they're deserving or not to be in the Hall of Fame, but several, he got several of his contemporaries into the Hall of Fame back then, and of course the time he played was exactly the time frame we're talking about. So it would have been players that were playing back then, and so I figured it was probably sometime 20s, 30s, somewhere in that time frame. That was my thought process, and so again, if you want to pause and think about it, you want to do some digging, see what you can find. Here is what I think. Here's what I think is the game that featured the most Hall of Famers that played in the game. It is May 24th, 1928, a game between the New York Yankees and Philadelphia Athletics. It was the first game of a doubleheader. The Yankees went on to win this one 9-7, with quite a bit of scoring there in the ninth inning, if you look. But here are the Hall of Famers that played in this game. So for the Yankees, who were the visiting team, we had Earl Combs, Leo DeRocher, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Tony Lazzeri, and then you can see Waite Hoyt came in as a reliever. So that makes 6 players on the Yankees roster that went on to be Hall of Famers. Okay? 6 players. Now, let's look at the Philadelphia Athletics roster. 1928, Ty Cobb, Tris Speaker, Mickey Cochran. You had Al Simmons, who came in to pinch hit for Walt French. You had Eddie Collins, who came in to pinch hit for Joe Boley. Lefty Grove was the starter. Jimmy Fox pinch hit for Lefty Grove. So the Philadelphia roster had 7 future Hall of Famers that played in this game. So if you add those together, 13 Hall of Famers played in this game. The first game of a doubleheader between the New York Yankees and Philadelphia Athletics, May 24th, 1928. Now, what makes it even crazier? Again, not talking about bench players, because I'm sure we would find even more. I think there was at least one other Hall of Famer that was on the bench. Herb Pennock, I think, was on the bench, but didn't play. But the other interesting thing is that 2 of the 3 umpires are also Hall of Famers, Tom Connolly and Bill McGowan. I believe both of those are Hall of Fame umpires. So those were both in the those were both in the game as well. We take it to that extreme. And then, in addition to that, the managers for both teams were Hall of Famers. Miller Huggins was the Yankees manager this game, well, for the Yankees that season, and he's in the Hall of Fame. And Connie Mack for the Philadelphia Athletics is a Hall of Famer also. Now, I believe Leo DeRocher is in the Hall of Fame as a manager, but he's still in the Hall of Fame. In any event, if we add all of that together, you have 13 players in the Hall of Fame, 2 umpires, and then, you can, I guess you could argue whether the manager should be considered into this total. But if you add the 2 managers in there, you get 17 Hall of Famers. Now, even if you exclude the managers, you still have 15 if you count the umps. If you want to exclude the umps, that's fine too. You still have 13 Hall of Famers. So I guess my question to you is there a game out there that had more Hall of Famers than 13? And if so, drop it down in the comments. See if you can get more than 13 Hall of Famers in a game. And we're not talking all-star games here. We're not talking all-star games. So that was the other exclusion. If we added all-star games in, there's, there surely would be other games with more than 13 probably, because I bet you there were all-star games that had, maybe, a huge percentage of people in the Hall of Fame, maybe. But I don't know. I haven't looked at the all-star games. I was basically thinking regular season games. So I guess, again, regular season games. If you could get to more than 13, drop it in the comments and let me know. Likewise, if somebody wants to dig into the all-star games and see what the most Hall of Famers in an all-star game was, I'd love to hear that too. I haven't dug into that one yet. And maybe we'll go the other way in the all-star games. What are the fewest Hall of Famers in an all-star game? Because one would think if it's an all-star game that most of those players are pretty good, generally speaking. I know they have to have representatives from every team and that kind of thing, which maybe skews the results a little bit. But And obviously not all All-Stars would be in the Hall of Fame. Um, so I'm curious what the fewest Hall of Famers in an All-Star game would be, and then what the most Hall of Famers in an All-Star game would be. But I think the gold standard for regular season is 13. So I just want to make a quick video because it was an interesting piece of baseball trivia that I was curious about. And again, I have to give props to the screen name Frank BMD, possibly Frank Burke maybe, on this message board, who came up with 13 as the answer. I don't know how he arrived at that, but I believe that's got to be the answer, right? 13, 9 players on a team. The most you could have 18 plus, I guess, pinch hitters and stuff, but 13 is pretty high. I know you'll find a lot of games with 10 or 11. Again, most of them are probably from back then, but 13's got to be up there. If it's not the answer, I'd love to hear it. So that's where I will stop this video. Just a quick one to talk about that baseball trivia. Let me know your answers in the comments. Let me know All-Star Game answers in the comments if you want to dig into it. Thank you so much for watching. I'm continuing with my projects. You'll see more videos about the projects here shortly. And until next time, have a great evening.